Hello and welcome back to another update. The first thing on the jobs done list is I got rid of the vertical wooden stand that was here and installed this rustic, rough but good wooden shelf for power tools. So now I can grab things with one hand and put them back, no problem. And I've got a lot of floor space back, and that's allowed me to give my bandsaw a permanent home because that was sort of floating around, didn't really have a home. And the welders are now closer to the welding table, which is just here off camera. I'm thinking I may have these cabinets live with their lids down and have another shelf just below the first one and keep my cordless tools and chargers and drill bits for the drill press, keep them all on that shelf. That could be a nice little upgrade, but maybe later. I also did some work for a friend called Martin who's rebuilding a CNC router. I made him a motor plate for his Z-axis a while ago out of a piece of plate aluminium, and he needed some hardened linear high wind style rails, bearing rails, shortening. So we milled those to length, we hard milled them on the milling machine, used a coated 4-flute carbide cutter, slow feed, slow spindle speed, lots of lube, and that did well. And I checked the cutter afterwards and there's no damage. There's a little bit of wear to the cutting edges, but there's no chips or real damage. And the ends of the cuts on those rails came out brilliantly. The harder the material, the better the finish you get, I think. We also cut some extrusion to length, so I had trimmed my head in very accurately, trimmed the table in, trimmed the vise in, and made the ends of those extrusions very, very square. And yeah. So here's the router in its current configuration, and I'll just put an arrow here where the Z-axis motor plate is, and this is where the linear rails are. And the clean room has been reconfigured, finally. This is what I've been aiming at since I first framed this room, was having all of my metrology stuff in one pile. So got the shadow graph, my metrology cabinet, the surface plate on its new stand, microscope, a couple of empty cabinets for now, hardness tester, and I've got a straight edge up there that needs scraping. I'll show you in the metrology cabinet a bit more now. This has been reconfigured so it makes a lot more sense now. I've got my 600mm Mitutoyo height gauge, a couple of surface gauges, mag bases, and nothing else in the top. This was full of junk before, and that's all clean now. In here I've got mics and the engineer's level, depth mic, telescoping gauges, stones, vernier protractor, tachometer, and some angle gauges. Here I've got indicators and calipers, more calipers, gauge blocks, plate gauges, adjustable parallels, small hole gauges, thread measuring wire, thread gauges and radius gauges and feeler gauges, and a small cylindrical square that I made. This is a new Starrett combination square set that I just recently acquired, and I'll tell you more about that acquisition later on, and some snugs and adapters for indicators, that kind of thing. And I've got a few scraping things in the bottom there. The scraper and the square and the straight edge, and a diamond lap that's going to be used later, and a roller and some blue. So that's my entire metrology section, and it really is just taking up this wall, and I like the fact that it's all in one place and there's no sort of camera gear in here, there's no electronics or printing stuff to sort of muddy up the waters. So I've now got printing stuff upstairs. This has about half the electronic stuff that it had on it before. There's still that bottom section to clear out. That's going to go upstairs. There's a few things that need to actually go from in here, like stationery and things like that. But I've got my machining books, all accessible, projects, fasteners, anything to do with filming, and I've also got some photography, videography, and books about filmmaking and stuff like that. So that's all relevant to what goes on in here. So basically this room is filming and editing, and measuring. And everything, all the lenses, all the measuring gear and all that kind of stuff benefit from being kept dryish and at a stable-ish temperature. So that's why they're in here. And obviously away from grinding dust and chips and milling swarf and whatnot. I'll show you the drawer things that I made. These frames are all heavy angle, welded into a rectangle, welded in at certain intervals. And these boxes are reclaimed, and it's a bit noisy. I need to put some drawer handles on, I need to clean up the boxes, I need to get all of this stuff tidy, I need to paint the frame and everything. But just having the plywood and the steel and the boxes all in the right place is a very good thing. So this is where machining materials are going to live as soon as I empty the other bench, which is that way. Rusty, look. Good boy. Gently. Good boy. Come here. Gently. Look. Here's the back view of those trays, and you can see that I've welded some tabs in just to stop things being pushed through. Just quick and dirty. So I also mentioned an electronics repair that I was doing last week, and I did that early this week. I did that on Monday, and went well. Got some parts from Mouser. They came sort of 2 days later, and got the part back to him, and he tried out the sim racing rig thing, the power supply, and it all works. Here's a picture of it all powered up. So that was a win, and they're very happy. Now we're on to the new acquisitions bit of the video. For the longest time, my MCO has been on this wobbly, horrible, temporary stand, which was just here when we moved in, and it's really fit for the bin. I had some welds to the corners, but it's all chrome plated stuff, and it's small section stuff, so it's still wobbly, but it's better than it was. And it's been fine for just holding as a placeholder for a real bench for this MCO. And I was planning to make a decent bench for it when a friend and viewer locally who works at the university said, "Oh, I've got the ideal frame for you." And he was talking about this one. So I got this earlier in the week, and it's made of heavy duty stuff. I think it's 3 or 4 mil steel, and all the corners are welded in solid, and it's the same on the bottom. And it's basically a double rack unit, and it's infinitely more stiff than the one it's on, and it's probably as good as anything I could make, if not better. It comes on casters at the moment, so I would want to change the bottom end a little bit. I'd want to cut some feet out of 100 by 100 steel and make them about 100 mil tall so that it matches what's on my other lathe. That means that I can get the pallet jack underneath, and these are also sturdy enough that I can attach some leveling feet to them. And I've got more of this material if I need it. I may also decide to chop out 100, 150 mil of depth, just so that it's not ridiculously wide compared to the lathe. The cabinet it's on is already a bit too wide, and this cabinet's wider again, so that would be an interesting job, but at least I now have a frame for the MCO. So thanks, Phil, much appreciated. Phil also gave me a Variac and a box full of electronics components and parts and things, which I will go through in due course and merge those things into my collection. So thanks again, Phil. So this is the big one. Do you remember how I had a Swedish shaper for a year or a year and a half or longer? And I cleaned it, but I didn't ever get to using it. And I decided, look, I don't really need a shaper. It's just taking up space. Well, I got a new shaper. It's a tiny one. This is an English-made Perfecto 7-inch stroke shaper. It's powered. Comes with a motor. The motor's single phase and just fits to the back of a bench. It's got a little clapper box here. All these screw threads are in great condition. There's very little backlash. Same applies to this one. This is an auto feed mechanism. So as the ram moves backwards and forwards and this crank rotates, it also has a separate conrod or crank arm that clicks this back and forwards, and there's a ratcheting pull mechanism in here. So that pulls this along slowly. I've turned it all over by hand, and you can see the ratcheting going on there. Now it's freewheeling backwards, and now it's rotating, and so on. And all these slides seem good. There's a dovetail here and there's a dovetail here, and they all seem very good. They look great. The gears are all in good condition. There's no teeth missing. It's a 6-inch by 6-inch table, 150 by 150. Yeah, 7-inch 7-inch bull wheel or whatever that's called. 7-inch stroke. I think it's actually more like 190 mil. But yeah, these are a very nice little machine. They're light enough that you can pick it up and move it around, but also big enough that you can do some useful work on it. So what's going to happen is this is basically ready to use. It just needs cleaning. Just needs cleaning and mounting to a table. So I may, for now, just mount it to this table, which I did say last week was going to be for drawing and use as a desk, but I've got nowhere else to put this thing. So yeah, I may mount it up here and see how it goes. And the reason I got it is not because I need a shaper, it's because it was for sale extremely locally for an extremely friendly, can't say no kind of price. So I would need to make a tool post for it, but I've been talking to Chirpy about that and looking at other little shapers like this and seeing what sort of sizes of tooling they can use, that kind of thing. So this is probably the big one, the big main acquisition. As well as the shaper and the combination square that I showed you earlier, there was also a selection of brass and a test bar for a lathe. This is in as new condition, Morse Taper 3 test bar. Lots of steel, lots of high-speed steel, a couple of taps, some screw pitch gauge, a couple of screw pitch gauges, Jenny leg calipers I've been needing for a long time, little V-block set, and a whole selection of knurls, including sort of rope and twist knurls. So I'm very happy with those. I do have a knurling tool. It's pretty ropey. I may end up designing another one or using one of the kits that's available. But having a selection of these is a really cool thing. Really happy about that. Right, well, we've been through the first two sections, work done and new arrivals, and I'm trying a new format for these videos. I'm trying to break it up into 3, work done, new arrivals, and then what might come next. There's always only a maybe next, because as I said last time, I'm a bit of a procrastinator, and as soon as I commit to doing something, I find a lot of other things to do. So I'll just rip through these potential next things that are still on the list from last time that I haven't done yet: belt grinder motor, lathe quick change tool post, the front doors, and more changes to the workbench. I want to do some leveling feet and some paint, and I want to fix up the vise. So that's all still on the plate. Obviously you've seen a couple of new things. That's the Emco base and the Perfecto shaper. They will need modifying and welding and painting and so on, and the shaper will need a cleanup and a test. But there's a paying job on the queue which takes priority. So I have some stainless steel machining and fabricating to do. I'll show you that. Here is a really poor condition set of stainless steel burners for a spit, for a roasting spit. They are basically tube or pipe with a bunch of holes drilled along them. There's a narrowed portion at the start, and there's a bit of machining to do. There's a slot which works with this coupling sleeve, and that acts as a adjustable air control, I believe. There's these posts and this grease drip guard. And on the far end, don't know if you can see that, there's a mounting flange. This piece in the middle here just needs cleaning up and reusing, but the screws are all corroded in. And this is about 10 years old, and the owner wants new stuff made. So I have bought some heavier gauge tube. This is about 0.75mm thick. This is about 2mm thick. Some heavier gauge flat bar. This is about 0.9. This is about 3mm. And I had a piece of stainless rod in stock for these posts. So I'm going to do all the drilling. I'm going to cap off the end and make some D-tabs. I'm going to cut up this piece of rod into posts, 8 little posts that are threaded on one end, and weld them along here and basically recreate that. This piece here, where it's tapered down from 2 directions, this is press formed. I'm going to actually turn a piece of solid. I've got plenty of scraps, and I'll bore it from both directions with a taper, and I'll slide a piece in and I'll just tack it on the inside. This is not airtight and the crimps aren't perfect, but that's on the list, and that needs doing as soon as possible really, because he's got a party happening in a week and a half. So that's all my news for this week. I think this, if I've got time, I'll make this into a proper project video, because it's different enough that I think it will be interesting. And it's actually a bit different for me. I've not done much with stainless, and drilling 1 million holes in it, 1.5mm diameter, I'm not looking forward to. So yeah, that's going to be the next sort of big project video, as long as everything goes to plan. And I will see you in a week or so for another update. Thanks for watching.